Hey, what's up guys? Gypsy back here today for CPC Week 7 going up against A12. A guy who's pretty, reasonably well known in the format. I think he's pretty good, to be honest. His performance in the CPC is usually really at a really high level, so yeah, he's definitely one of the stronger players in the league, and he has a really threatening offensive team. It's I've heard that he's pretty known for drafting kind of unorthodox teams, but having really good success with them. So always good to see that kind of creativity, work out. But yeah, he is the man who loves Diggersby. So yeah, he has Diggersby on his squad. He recently obtained it in a free agency or a trade, I think, with someone else. So he's got his star back on his team. But as you can see, he opted not to bring it to this game. And I can understand. I have a Cell Stealer. I have some pretty solid physical kind of walls on my team. I have Decidui, which resists its stab and forces it to run coverage. Obviously, Fire Punch hits Cell Stealer as well. He may also have opted for Knockoff to hit that, but as you can see, he didn't choose to bring it, and he has instead brought Charizard Y, complemented by the Zorok Heracross offensive core. Then he's got a nice defensive core of Hippowdon, Jellicent, and most likely a specially defensive Zapdos. Because his team actually lacks a Dragon Resist, as well as a Fairy Resist, I'm pretty sure, outside of Zard Y. He's really sort of hard pressed to run a Spadef Zapdos in this matchup. Obviously, me having a Latios, if you look at his team, his whole roster doesn't have a Draco switch in at all. So were I to bring a Spax Latios, which I heavily considered to this match, it essentially gets a kill. It one Okos or 2 Ekos everything on his team. Even a Spadef Zapdos can't comfortably switch in, particularly if rocks are up. So yeah, he's got a pretty vulnerable team to Laddie, but he does have a very threatening team. Obviously, you see the Zorok and Heracross. A12's used Zorok quite well this season. He's really playing mind games with it, and he's definitely caught some people off guard, so definitely have to look out for that. It couples pretty nicely with Heracross, because Heracross's switch-ins typically don't want to take a dark attack or coverage moves, a Zorok that may be aimed at a Heracross switch-in. And obviously, Zorok having U-turn can just gain momentum into stuff like Zard Y on switches that Heracross may force if Zorok is disguised as Heracross. So he may also choose to hide it as Zard Y, which would make a lot of sense, as Latios is probably going to be my Zard Y switch-in. Although it's a fairly shaky switch-in if he is modest Dragon Pulse. But one of the ways of telling Zorok, obviously from stuff like Zard Y and Hippo, is if weather isn't set. So obviously he could be like Sandforce Hippo and pre-evolved Zard, so obviously no drought is present, but assuming Zard is Mega Evolved, if obviously Sun doesn't return to the field when Mega Zard comes out, it's going to be obviously Zorok. So stuff like that you got to keep in mind before facing Zorok. I definitely recommend anyone facing a team with Zorok, you think about these kind of things before going into the match, because I see a lot of people getting taken off guard by Zorok, and it's definitely an interesting one in the format. So yeah, you got to be careful how you play around it. But anyway, jumping into the team we have today, we've got a nice, pretty offensive, bulky DD Zard. Nothing too crazy on the set. Pretty nice, fast Chople. This thing, Krookodile. I really like this one. Got Aerial Ace on here for Heracross. I can even take a +1 CC and Oko with Aerial Ace outspeeding. Also helps me versus Focus Blast Zorok or Low Kick Zorok, so that's pretty nice. Got a nice Colberberry, Carmine, Roost, Refresh, Dragon Pulse Latias. I mentioned he doesn't have a Dragon Resist on his team, and obviously I could have brought Specs Draco, but Zard Y is a pretty big menace, and having a Mon that can switch into that, get a Carmine up and avoid the 2 Echo from Dragon Pulse after a Carmine is pretty solid. I also set up on stuff like Zapdos, Jellicent, Hippowdon, lacking Whirlwind. If he's a toxic EQ Slack off rock set, I can just set up all over it. And the Colbur helps me versus Zorok, so I don't fear Sucker Punch from an Adamant Life Orb Zorok. I can live that with relative ease, even after a rock switch in, because I am really bulky on this set, so that's pretty nice. This Laddie is definitely nice in this matchup if I can just determine which Mon Zorok is, and obviously get rid of Heracross. If it is a Scarf set, this Mon can definitely go in. So then we have a physically defensive Licky. It's kind of mixed defensive, but predominantly physically defensive. Allows me to spread Toxics. He doesn't have a steel type, so Toxic is pretty nice versus his team. Passing wishes to the rest of my squad is also appreciated. Then we have Life Orb Gren, kind of just goes ham versus his team, as you can see. And then lastly, we have a pretty nice mixed sort of defensive / offensive Celestealer here. Can really go in with its given set, but I'm not really going to talk too much about that. So, going to jump into the game. I am going to lead off with my Latios here, as he does lead off with his Heracross. So the nice thing about this is, like, had he led with Zard Y, which would have been a pretty solid lead to my Crocodile, if he expected me to be a Leeds Rock Crocodile, he could have just fired off a Fire Blast, or even just click Dragon Pulse, predicting my Lati to come in. It would have been a pretty nasty situation turn 1, but leading off with Lati does guarantee me a really nice matchup versus the Charizard. And on the off chance he did want to disguise his Zoroark as the Zard, I do have the Colbur Berry. So he leads off with his Heracross, and obviously I'm not trying to take a Mega Horn turn 1, so him staying in and clicking Close Combat, predicting my switch out to something like Celestealer is something I'm willing to accept if he does want to stand and do that. Alternatively, if this is Zoroark, which it could well be, if this is Zoroark, chances are he's either going to click Knockoff or U-turn here. I don't really expect a special variant, just because I have some really solid special kind of tanks on my team, but if he did opt to be a special variant and he clicked Dark Pulse, he loses a lot of momentum if I go into something like Licky or Celestealer here. So I do expect this to be a Zoroark and potentially Knock or U-turn here. Either way, Celi is a safe switch in, as he does actually reveal the U-turn here. And judging by this damage, I think he was like naive with very little attack investment. And this is confirmed later on during the match, where he does reveal to be a specially offensive Zoroark. So I do believe that was naive. It could have been timid, just a really high roll, but I think it was a naive Zoroark. So that gave me some important information that led me to believe he was more than likely a special attacking Zoroark. And more than likely Scarf with a move like U-turn. You don't really often see that on like Life Orb or E-Belt sets. Obviously he's not Life Orb, and Scarf Zoroark does make a ton of sense versus my team. So if he's like Scarf Foul Play, which he may have been, that also helps him versus +1 Zard. So he's going to U-turn out here. He's going to go out into his Zard, and I know because that was his Zoroark. This is definitely his Zard, so I've got to respect that. I am just going to switch out this turn, as he does switch out into his Heracross here. So he may have expected me to go out into my own Zard there, my own Zard, my own Latios there, or my Licky. Either way, bringing Heracross in forces me to play around the potential Scarfed Heracross. But because I do have Protect on this set, I will be able to scout what he wants to lock himself into. Dual Scarf on this team isn't entirely out of the question either. Like, Scarf Zoroark and Scarf Heracross are pretty solid versus my team, especially if I bring a really offensive team. They can really just punish that. So I'm just going to click Protect here. I really don't expect an SD or like a sub bulk up set. It's just like it's sub is okay, like sub bulk up is okay, or sub SD, but just like SD3 attacks, I don't see it being too well versus my team, because Heracross's speed tier is pretty average versus my team. A lot of my faster threats can outspeed it and no-code. So I did expect a Scarf Terror here, as I am just going to go for Protect, and this does actually reveal that he's just going to click Close Combat here. So I know that I live a Scarfed Adamant Close Combat, so I am just going to click Toxic here, and that damage reveals, I do believe that was a pretty high Adamant roll, or maybe just got like a really high Jelly roll, but I do think that's Adamant Heracross, and he's got, like, unless he feared Scarf Mesprit, he has a pretty solid reason to run Adamant. So we get the Toxic off, and this is going to be important because this allows us to differentiate between the two, Zoroark and his Heracross. And one of the main reasons I brought Licky was as a physical response to another mon he didn't bring, and the fact that he didn't bring it means that it's kind of expendable in this game. Preserving it as a sack will be nice though, so I'm just going to click Protect here, as he does stay in and just go for the Close Combat. So he's getting some nice chip. I'm whittling him down. This is important. So not only will the Toxic be an indicator of which is Heracross and which is Zoroark, but also he will be chipped down, whereas the Zoroark will be at full. So that's important. If I can get him closer and closer down, he's going to be in range of stuff like Dragon Pulse from my Lati, and yeah, Water Shuriken from my Gren eventually if I can chip him down enough. So I'm going to switch out here into my Latios, as I'm pretty certain that he is indeed a Scarfed set, as he's going to go for the Close Combat here. He does 36, and that is definitely Adamant damage. This turn I am just going to click, I very well contemplated clicking Roost here, as Roost would make a lot of sense, preserving the longevity on Laddie for stuff like Zard and Zapdos. He may try and capitalize on that by going Zoroark, because chances are, like, if I have Psychic, I'm going to click it here, or I'm going to recover up. And going Zoroark instantly shifts the momentum back in his court, and allows him to potentially catch me off guard if I did decide to recover up or go for Psychic. So I'm going to click Dragon Pulse as he opts to stay in here and get damage on Laddie, which he maintains it was a bad play or a misplay on his part. I can definitely understand where he's coming from there, but also getting damage off on this Laddie could have been nice for A12 if his plan was to weaken and my team and win with Zard. It also gave him information, so if I attacked first there, like, he knew I was Scarfed, and if he was like Scarfed Pursuit or something with Zoroark, he could have trapped me if I locked myself into Psychic this. But he's going to go down, which is nice because now we don't have to worry about this threat versus my team. I had solid answers to it in the form of like Chople Crook, Water Shuriken, Gren, obviously my Selly, and my bulky Zard, but either way it was still a bit of an annoyance to my team for sure. So he's going to bring in his Zard here. Now, I believe this turn I am going to switch out, going to go into my Licky here, just scouting to see if that was a Zard, if he had Dragon Pulse there. So chances are he was either going to click Dragon Pulse or even Toxic with his Zard, predicting me to Roost up. If I had Roosted up and he was Modest Zard, he could have potentially taken me out with a high roll Dragon Pulse, and that's not something I wanted to allow. I can Roost up with my Laddie versus stuff like the Jellicent, the Hippowdon, and the Zapdos, as well as this Zard if it doesn't actually have Dragon Pulse. If he's Toxic, I set up on it all day, so that's pretty nice, but chances are, more than anything, that was actually going to be Zoroark. Because of the way he brought it in like that, that was probably going to be Zoroark. And I mentioned earlier in the video, like, the turn 1 kind of told me that this was more than likely Scarf Zoroark, especially from the damage I received on my Celesteela, as well as the fact that he was more than likely Scarfed, hence the U-turn damage, the U-turn actual slot on this Zoroark, because you don't really see U-turn on mixed sets. So he is going to U-turn out, and he's going to actually bring in his actual Zard here, and this turn I believe I do Wish Up, as if he subbed here, for example, if he was some weird subset, I could Wish Protect, bring myself back up to a range of HP where I could start firing off wishes for the rest of my team, but he does just risk the biscuit and go for Focus Blast here. So Focus Blast, interesting play. Perhaps he was trying to catch my Greninja there. Probably would have just gone with the safe option of clicking like Flamethrower or Fire Blast if he had it, due to the higher accuracy. I didn't really need to click Focus Blast because, like, even if I was Cloud 9 for some reason, I still died to a Flamethrower. So yeah, very risky play, but I was sacking Licky off anyway, and that gave me valuable information. So we've seen Focus Blast. He more than likely has Fire coverage. Chances are he has Roost. So the last slot could be something like Dragon Pulse Toxic, or he could even be packing Solar Beam to hit Mariana, because Mariana obviously takes on a Zard, lacking any sort of coverage to hit it. So it really just depends how much he respects that mon on my team. So now I am going to go out into my own Zard here, knowing I can live a Dragon Pulse from this Zard if he does decide to stay and click it. And at this stage I still don't know if he's Dragon Pulse or if he's Toxic, so I think Dragon Pulse is a little bit better in this situation, but if he expected me to be a really bulky Laddie, Toxic would have been really solid had I not had Refresh. So this turn, I contemplating Dragon Dancing here, reason being I live a Dragon Pulse, and after getting to +1 I 2 KO Hippowdon on the switch with Outrage, even if he's like max Fizz Def, so that's really solid. But if he did go out to Hippowdon here on my DD, I would essentially be sacking Zard if he did have EQ, because my Zard would be really low. If he was Rocky Helmet, I would die to 2 rounds of Rocky Helmet plus EQ, and preserving Zard is pretty nice in this matchup because it can set up and win late game once I've weakened the Hippowdon or determined its set. So this turn I am just going to go for the Dragon Claw here. I get damage off in this Zard either way. I put it in range, guaranteed range of anything from Greninja, as well as a Dragon Pulse from my Laddie, and that's the most important thing. Like, once I determine if this has Dragon Pulse or not, it becomes setup fodder for Latios. And if he does have Dragon Pulse and I get Dragon Claw damage off in here, he's instantly in range of Dragon Pulse unboosted, as well as any hit from Gren. So that's important. So I'm just going to click Dragon Claw. He gets off the Toxic, revealing he's faster than my Zard. So I'm going to click Dragon Claw here, and we crit him, which is really unfortunate. So the Dragon Claw would have done, the Dragon Claw did about, it did around 70%, so hence why the crit actually killed Zard. So it was obviously a 2 KO, but very unfortunate for A12 that we did crit his Zard. Don't entirely agree with him staying in there, because had I Dragon Danced up there, he literally lost him on the second turn. The turn after that, although if he was, I don't know, he may have been willing to make that trade for just getting the Toxic off, but if I clicked Outrage there, this Zard guaranteed went down anyway, so it was unfortunate nonetheless. He would have been able to preserve this Zard at like 30% or something and potentially bring it in on a Cellar Stealer, although I was a ton minus 2, so yeah, not sure how much that mattered, but obviously it did, because obviously it mattered to some extent, because he would have had a sack if anything, so that is definitely unfortunate. But Zard goes down, although he does get the Toxic off on my Charizard, which is actually going to play into his strategy with this Hippodon, because spoilers, this Hippo actually doesn't have EQ, so this is a Toxic Rocks Slack Off Whirlwind set, so it's designed at not letting me set up, obviously in sweep, and just slack off, recover, Toxic, Storm me out, so that explains why he was adamant about getting the Toxic off there, as opposed to just going into this hard. But I still feel as though going hard Hippo was his play, and preserving Zard. But this turn, I am just going to switch out into my Crocodile here, as he does fire off his rocks this turn. So I'm just going to go for my rocks here. Heavily contemplated going for Taunt, but on the off chance that he went into Zoroark here, me going for rocks this turn and getting them up is very important. Also getting up rocks, like chips Zoroark down, chips Zapdos down, puts everything in range of Gren essentially. So that is my priority at this stage. So he's going to go for Toxic and miss here. This Toxic miss ultimately proves to have no impact on the game, as you'll see. I'll explain why later. This Crocodile is not even like a presence late game. Although if he did get the Toxic off, it would have put me lower to the point where an attack, I live an attack later, but even with the Toxic damage, I don't think it actually ended up impacting the game. We'll go over that later though. But I'm going to go for Taunt here to prevent him from Toxicking me a second time, so he's now going to be more than likely forced to switch out or click EQ at this stage. So I'm just going to go into my Cellar Stealer, as he does opt to switch out into his Jellicent here. So I know nothing about this Jellicent yet. I haven't seen the set. I'm assuming it's Spadef to maybe help him take on Latios here, but I don't have that information yet. I am just going to click, I believe I click Giga Drain here, as that will chip him down, put him in range of Gren's Dark Pulse. If he is a Colbur, Jellicent, it puts him closer and closer in range of Gren's Dark Pulse, which, if you look at his team, like, Gren just wins at this stage. So once I put Zoroark into range of Water Shuriken, if he is Scarfed, Gren can just wrap this game up. So assuming this is just like a non-Scarf Zapdos, so he's going to go into his Hippo here. We proc his Rindo Berry, which is nice. That's pretty solid, because now obviously my Giga Drains are going to be doing more, and I'm just going to auto here. The fact that he had Toxic, Stealth Rock, Slack Off led me to believe that his last move was more than likely EQ to actually damage my team, but he does reveal to be Whirlwind here, so he's actually like mono status, so he can't actually attack my Pokemon, which is really nice. This means that my last Mon Laddie can just set up all over this Hippo. I can just refresh off Toxics. I can even set up with Zard if he just wants to roost up on me. So he's going to Whirlwind me out here into my Zard. And this turn I believe I roost up, as his best play is to just slack off turn 1. Going for Whirlwind there risked me just going for Outrage or Fliblets and putting him really low and potentially getting whirled into something like Ren. So he made the right play by slacking off there as we roost up, and this turn I'm just going to click Outrage, as he does go for a second slack off. So had I gone for DD there, I would have been able to go for Outrage the next turn and force him to Whirlwind, but he makes the second slack off play there, which works out for him because he will just be able to whittle me down with Toxic. But I'm just going to switch out here. I'm going to go into my Cellar Stealer, not wanting to risk potentially hitting Confusion there, and obviously like going down to Toxic. I can roost up on this Hippo later because it has no EQ. I will be able to go onto my Lateralis here, my Silly, as he goes to the rocks there. So I'm gonna Giga Drain here, get some chip back, get some health back, get some chip on this Hippo, and as he whirlwinds me out into my Latios. Now this is really nice. He whirls me out into Lati, which potentially risks taking a Toxic here, but chances are he's going to preserve Hippo because he doesn't know my moveset yet. I could have Surf, I could have Draco. It's going to take out this Hippo if I do click it. And me going for Roost this turn puts me at a range where nothing on his team can take me out, even a Dark attack from Zorok because of my Cold Berry. So he's going to go into his Jellicent here. I'm going to switch out here, not wanting to risk this potentially being Zorok, as although Zorok hasn't taken as many rock switch-ins as Jelly, I wasn't sure at this stage in the game if this was Zorok because it was very close and Sharpedoes wasn't telling me the percentages they were currently at. So gonna make the switch out into my Celesteela here, as he does switch out into his Zorok. So this is nice. He's gonna go for U-turn here, and he's gonna make the switch out into his Zapdos. So I now know that Zorok has taken 1 round of rocks. Next time it comes in, it's gonna have taken 2. Zapdos comes in here. He reveals to be Pressure as I get the Heavy Slam damage off, and that does a decent chunk because I am invested, and that reveals this Zapdos to be a max HP or near about max HP Zapdos. And he's going to reveal lefties here, so this is nice. Don't have to fear Buggy MZ. A12 keeps talking about how people are sleeping on Zapdos as a Z move mon, and I really felt as though he could, Buggy MZ like Z U-turn or Z Signal Beam was definitely viable versus my team to hit stuff like Crocodile and Lati, which resist or are immune to electric attacks. But he opted to go for lefties, so like fair bring, I guess, like wanting to have more longevity versus stuff like Celesteela. But he is more than likely a defensive set as revealed by his lefties. So now I'm going to go into my Zard here. Now, how do you attack my Zard and take me out here in conjunction with toxic damage? Gren basically just won. So Gren came in, clicked Ice Beam. Even though this is like a max HP Zapper, he's going to go down to Ice Beam at 54 because I am Life Orb with modest nature, I think. But chances are he was going to Roost up here, and because he's max HP, chances are he's like some sort of like defensive or Spidef Zapper. So I know I'm going to outspeed, as he may not want to risk me denting him either, so he's probably going to make the switch out into his Hippo here, so I'm just going to Roost up, get my Zard up to a nice amount of health where I can, check the rest of his team later on, as Hippo is going to come in here. Never thought I'd say this, but yeah, this Hippo can't do a thing to my Zard apart from Whirlwinded out, so he's going to slack off here. And I think this turn I do switch out, or I may just stay in an attack. No, I switch out to my Celesteela, my Crocodile, because if he does go for the Whirlwind, I guarantee switch out into potentially Gren, Selly, or Lati, which is either way is really good in this situation. But he's going to whirl me out into my Zard, unfortunately. So the thing I don't want to come in, but that's all good. I'm just going to Roost up once more. There's not really too much he can do. He'll eventually run out of Slack Off and Whirlwind PP, and my Zard is staying pretty healthy, which is nice. So going to go out once again into my Crook, as his Hippo is just going to go for the rocks here, and this turn I will just be able to taunt whatever wants to come in. So he knows that I have taunt, so he's going to switch out, not wanting to get like taunted there, because if I did taunt in that turn, I could just freely click knock off or EQ if I had it, if I had either of those. So I'm just going to click taunt here, as Jellicent is going to come in. Now, because Jellicent is now at 76, I knew this was Zorok because previously his Jellicent was in the 70s last time it came in, and I was counting the percentages that Zorok was at, and this is something I definitely recommend you guys do if you are facing Zorok. He's going to fire for Focus Blast, and we chew that quite nicely, as now he is going to just go down to an EQ. So Chopple coming through on this Crook, and this is what I was saying earlier about the Toxic Mist not necessarily mattering. I still had 30% left on this Crook, so I was only in for like a turn at a time with Crook for the 2 times that it came in, and that would have resulted in only 12% cumulative toxic damage over those 2 turns. So I still would have been out of range of Focus Blast even if I had been toxicked on the turn that Hippodon missed on my Crook. So that's just something to keep in mind there. So that's what I meant about it not really impacting the game, but obviously it's not nice. It's not a nice thing to happen in a game, but yeah, his Zorok is going to go down there, which is nice. So no more mind games with that. I can just stay in here and click Earthquake here. It will give me information on this jelly. If this is Scarf Jelly, I literally just go into Laddie, click Carmine and win. But yeah, getting damage off on this is going to guarantee this is in range of Gren, so now that I know Gren can come in here freely, I can just click Dark Pulse, claim my kill. Nothing's really wanting to switch into Dark Pulse on rocks and take a follow-up hit, so Jelly's going to go down, and now Gren is looking in the driver's seat to win this game. So is Laddie, to be honest. I really wanted this Laddie set to kind of put in the work, so I don't risk the roll here on Ice Beam. I haven't confirmed if he's not like a... I don't know yet if he's like a calm zapper with like a ton of speed F. It was a pretty solid roll in my favor just to kill max HP Zapdos there, but obviously not trying to risk differential and a mon that can just Oko Hippodon. So I'm going to go into my Charizard here and just click Roost. As Zapdos does inevitably roost up, wanting to remain healthy for Latios and the Cell Stealer, so this is nice, going to just roost up once more. As yeah, not too much this Hippodon can do apart from just whirlwind me out, so I'm going to Dragon Dance this turn as he slacks off, as he Stealth Rocks there. The reason I Dragon Dance was, Dragon Dance encourages him to go for slack off, because he knows +1 outrage, like he knows Outrage won't be doing it too much to me, and if I do click Outrage and he starts slacking off, he will be able to Toxic Storm me down, and he will be able to remain around like 100%, like around like 80% by the end of the exchange. So what this does is it gives me a free switch into Gren, because he's not going to Whirlwind here. If I Outrage and he Whirlwinds, he's severely weakened, and anything that comes in can just finish him off. So going for slack off is 100% his play. So I bait him into going for slack off and going into my Gren, and yeah, now I can just click Surf because this Hippo is just going to drop and Zapdos will be 2 KO'd. So Gren gets its next kill. Gwen putting in the work this game for sure. Really enjoying using this mon in the format. As now I will just be able to bring in my Latios here and start Carminding up and Roosting up. As his Zapdos is, I believe, going to reveal Toxic this turn. As we're going to Carmind up one time, just once, in case he does have Signal Beam. And yeah, this will allow us to refresh the next turn. He does go for Roost, so this is like a roosting pressure Zapdos. Definitely a solid set, but it's not going to save him here. I will just be able to refresh off the Toxic. And yeah, this Zapdos is basically going to get 1v1 by this Latios. I think like A12 knows that's a massive weakness in his team, and there's only so much he could have done to yeah, fix up that weakness with the choices that he made. He did trade away Kyurem, which I was surprised at, and picked up Zygarde. So yeah, his team changed around quite a bit during the season, but he opted not to grab he wasn't able to grab a Steel type on his team because of like a point limit or something like that. So yeah, this laddie really went in this game. Maybe like I mentioned earlier, like a Z U-turn Zapdos would have been solid in this matchup to capitalize on the laddie and Crook that switch into it, but even so, I was EV'd to live a Z U-turn after rocks with this Latios and Roost up on it. So I felt like that was his best set, but he opted not to bring it. And although Toxic Zapdos is still really solid in this matchup, if I wasn't this Latios set, so that's pretty solid. We can just get to +6/+6 and take out this Zapdos. I'm just gonna switch. I'm just gonna speed up these turns here because it takes a little while. I get parried a few times, and we just take out the Zapdos. So that's gonna be week 7 of the CPC. Hope you guys did enjoy. Definitely happy with the way I played this game. Go check out A12. Go check out his side of the match. He's definitely a solid player. I know he's not having the hottest season, but yeah, would not be surprised to see him make a comeback for playoffs because he definitely has a threatening team. And I think the new transactions that he made with picking up stuff like Heracross and Zoroark is really gonna help him. Yeah, help him potentially get to playoffs. So that'll be interesting to see. But that's gonna be it, guys. If you did enjoy, drop a like and let me know what you guys thought in the comments of the game and the team. And I'll catch you guys next.